The story opens on a chilly March evening with the protagonist returning home after a grueling day of work, their mind and body exhausted from the demands of daily life. They are keen for a quiet night alone, craving peace and comfort as they step into the familiar surroundings of their house. The warmth of home contrasts sharply with the darkness outside, casting an eerie silence that seems almost too calm. The protagonist's house feels like a haven, and they settle in, reaching for a cold beer as they unwind in the silence. As they flip through TV channels in search of something interesting to watch, they find nothing that holds their attention, adding to a slight sense of restlessness. Then, without warning, the power cuts out, plunging the room into darkness. The silence now feels oppressive as the only sounds are the protagonist's own breathing and the faint creak of the house settling. They rise fumbling for a flashlight, their tired minds struggling to make sense of the sudden isolation imposed by the blackout. In the unsettling quiet that follows, the protagonist realizes that this blackout is unlike any they've experienced before. Seeking answers, they step outside to assess the extent of the outage, hoping perhaps to see other houses similarly affected. But as they look around, they see a neighbor's lights still on, confirming their house alone is in darkness. Dread creeps in as they return inside, only to find their door now locked from the inside, a fact that startles them, as they're certain they left it open. Calling out for their spouse, there's no answer, and suddenly the quiet feels charged with an unseen threat. Moving cautiously, the protagonist checks another door, only to find it locked as well, further feeding their growing sense of alarm. Then they notice something odd in the yard. The garden hose is stretched out and out of place, as though someone used it recently, and a chilling thought crosses their mind. What if the blackout was planned? The tension mounts as they peer into a window and spot flashlights moving through their house, strangers rifling through drawers and belongings as if the home is theirs. Heart pounding, the protagonist realizes they're facing a break-in and their spouse is still inside. The final story takes place on a dark, rainy night as the protagonist works the night shift alone in a remote warehouse. It's a quiet job, the kind that would normally offer solace, but tonight's storm heightens his nerves, bringing with it an uncomfortable sense of isolation. As the rain pelts against the warehouse roof, the power cuts out yet again, this time leaving him in total darkness. With a flashlight in hand, he begins his security checks, but halfway through, he hears a metallic clang echo from the other side of the warehouse. A flash of light catches his eye, a flashlight beam, signaling someone else's presence. His instincts kick in as he tracks the light to the origin, where he discovers wet footprints and a faint metallic odor filling the air. Unnerved, he realizes he's not alone, and the lurking figure, if not more than one, may be watching his every move. The protagonist's heart races as he senses danger closing in. Moving as quietly as possible, he hears whispering, the faint murmurs sending chills down his spine. His only choice is to run, attempting to lose the figures in the maze of warehouse aisles. But they're quick, and he hears footsteps pounding behind him, coming closer with each step. Rushing through the narrow aisles, he reaches the exit door and bursts out into the night, breathless but alive. When the police arrive, they confirm signs of forced entry. But like before, the intruders have vanished, leaving the protagonist with unanswered questions and a boss who insists he'll have to work another shift soon, safety protocols notwithstanding. In the aftermath of these terrifying encounters, the protagonist is left with a haunting realization. Their life will never be truly free of fear. Every night they remain vigilant, their sense of safety forever compromised by the constant possibility of unseen threats. Though the days go on and they carry on with their work, the trauma lingers, a shadow that follows them. Even now, as they sit in the house or walk through the warehouse alone, they can't shake the feeling that someone might be lurking, watching, waiting to. Desperation overtakes the protagonist as they spot their spouse through a window, sitting unaware of the intruders just a few rooms away. Thinking quickly, they grab a handful of small rocks and toss them toward the window, trying to get their spouse's attention without alerting the intruders. When their spouse finally notices, the protagonist signals them to hide, their gestures urgent and pleading. The intensity of the moment is thick with fear, as they know any sound could reveal them. Running to a neighbor's house, they call the police, reporting the break-in with a mix of fear and determination. Every passing minute feels like an eternity, each second a reminder of the danger lurking in their home. When the police arrive, they find the house ransacked, but the intruders gone, leaving behind a mess and the memories of terror. The protagonist's spouse describes hearing whispers and footsteps growing closer as they hid, an experience that leaves both of them shaken long after the night ends. Years later, a similar incident unfolds, amplifying the protagonist's trauma. Staying in his parents' basement one stormy evening, the protagonist is momentarily comforted by the coziness of the space. As the storm rages outside, the basement feels both secure and isolated, a place where he's free to relax undisturbed. But then the power goes out again, triggering memories of past intrusions. A faint thud on the basement window catches his attention, snapping him out of his reverie. As he moves closer, his stomach drops when he sees a man's face pressed against the glass, staring at him with unsettling calmness. Panic rises as the man lingers, unmoving, almost as if testing the protagonist's reaction. Then footsteps upstairs confirm the worst. The house isn't empty. They've broken in. The protagonist realizes he's trapped, with no cell service to call for help, and any attempt to leave might expose him. He knows he must act carefully if he hopes to make it out safely. Determined not to fall victim again, the protagonist considers his options, scanning the basement for potential escape routes. The intruders' footsteps grow louder, their voices murmuring just above, sending a fresh wave of fear through him. Then, as he catches a snippet of their conversation, he hears one of them mention his name, a sinister detail that amplifies his dread. It's clear now these intruders know exactly who he is. With no time to spare, he wedges himself through a narrow window, crawling into the wet night air, desperate to avoid being seen. The storm pours down around him, but the relief is overwhelming as he scrambles into the shadows, finally managing to get far enough away to call for help. When the police arrive, they search the house, but find no one. He feels a bitter mix of relief and frustration, wondering why this keeps happening to him, and realizing that his sense of safety may never fully return.